Right, hello, everyone, and welcome to Say Hello to Effortless AP Invoice Automation That Works, sponsored by Kruggel Lawton. My name is Cherie Sheeler, and I will be your moderator for today. And I would like to welcome our partners to this call from Nimbello and Lippert that will cover Nimbello, and Nimbello will cover how we can help you automate your AP process. So before we get started, let me just cover a couple of our housekeeping items. This program does qualify for 1 hour of computer software and application CPE credit. And in order for you to receive this credit, you must be logged in for at least 50 minutes of this program, complete 3 out of the 4 polls that are presented, and complete the evaluation at the end of this session. CPE certificates will be emailed to you from KL_marketing@klcpas.com, and you can expect to receive those within two weeks after the program date has ended. Be sure that your email can accept this email address, but you can always reach out to KL_marketing at klcpas.com with any questions. We are using Zoom as our delivery platform, and your phone lines have been muted. You can submit questions through the presentation directly to our presenters by using the QA icon at the bottom of your screen. You can use the chat box for comments and/or discussions about the content being presented as well. And if you would like to come off mute and ask a question, feel free to use the raised hand icon available at the bottom of your screen, and we would be happy for you to come off mute and share any insights that you have regarding what is being presented today. So with that said, I would like to go ahead and turn our program over to Adam Schwelnus, our partner here at Kruggel Lawton, to do some introductions. Adam?
Thanks, Cherie. So pleasure to be here today and moderating this discussion. And as Cherie mentioned, we do have the question and answer open. The webinar chat is open. So as we go, if there's questions that come up, feel free to shoot those our way as we're going. So quick introduction of myself. I'm the partner in charge of our client accounting and advisory services group at Kruggel Lawton. So a lot of outsourced accounting solutions. We work with clients on AP processing and automation, so it's something near and dear to my heart. With me today, and I have the pleasure of joining Milind Agtey, who is the founder and president of Nimbello, and Teresa Walters, who's manager of payment and vendor master team at Lippert. As indicated in the sign up sheet, this is going to be a little bit of a continuation of what was presented in our 2024 CFO Summit on automation, process improvements, and this is specifically around the AP automation solutions, specifically Nimbello today presenting with us. You're going to learn about the benefits of this, how to take this business case for implementing this, and really when it might fit for your business. So before we get started, we're just going to do our first poll question here because it will help to guide some of the conversation. And the question is, what percentage of invoices is your business processing that are PO based and greater than 80%, 50 to 80%, or less than 50%?
Okay, the poll is open. Please go ahead and select your response. If none of the responses reply to you, just selecting an option for CPE credit is required. Okay, we're going to give it another 10 seconds, and then we're going to close our poll. Please respond. Okay, and here are those results.
All right. Thank you for that, Cherie, and for everybody that participated. Good to see where we're at. About 30% across the board in each section. So again, good to know and a good way to get started. So as we get started, just want to welcome again the other presenters, Milind and Teresa. And at this time, Melinda, I think it'd be great if you're able to give a little further introduction of yourself, a little bit of your background in Nimbello and what the company really does.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you everybody for joining this webinar. The purpose of this webinar, as Adam mentioned, is to increase your awareness of automation opportunities in the AP world. With regards to ourselves, our company's name is Nimbello. We started about 15 years ago under the name of Easy Access. We are based in South Bend, Indiana. We have clients all over the country. And our main focus is to build and maintain a product that helps automate your AP invoice processing and also the payment part of it to automate that. The solution itself is web-based, so you don't have to install anything on your servers. And the solution can work regardless of the ERP that you're on. Now, remember, your ERP will continue to remain the system of record. The Nimbello platform just does things that your ERP cannot do. And we have built integrations into quite a few ERPs that a lot of the attendees are on. So it makes it very simple. So hopefully by the end of today, you will have had an opportunity to understand how our solution and in fact AP automation in general can help you.
Thanks, Milind. And Teresa, why don't you give us a little more background on yourself, your role, and some of our listeners might not be familiar with Lippert, but just kind of the size of the organization and what you're dealing with there.
Sure. Excuse me. So Lippert Components or Lippert, I've been with Lippert 24 years. I started before anything was consolidated, everything was plant-based. And I've been in accounts payable for probably 16 years out of the 24. Lippert Components is, if you don't know what it is in this area, they are manufacturers and distributors for RV, bus, and pretty much large industry components for buses and yeah, that kind of thing. Anyways, we don't actually make the RV, we make all the parts that go in it. So if you don't know what that is, yeah, Lippert's pretty big around this area. We have, I think, last time I checked, it was like 11,000 employees through the US. We have 86 plants in the United States, and that doesn't include our foreign plants. Yeah, so we started with Nimbello in 2018 to outsource our AP. We needed that to help us a lot with our AP. So I right now I'm over not over accounts payable. I'm over vendor payments and the vendor master, but I still manage the Nimbello software for accounts payable. So any kind of new development or adding things or new plants that come into the system is what I take care of for them.
All right. Thanks, Teresa. Appreciate that.
Yep.
We'll get more information from you as we go. So back to you, Milind. What are the factors that would really indicate that a company should be looking into AP automation in a solution like Nimbello?
Adam, that's a very good question. And depending on the company, things change. But if you were to sort of try to distill down what factors typically companies look at, they would include you want to improve the operational efficiency of your staff. And the way you can do that is to automate the tasks that are repetitive so that they don't have to keep doing mundane tasks. So the first biggest thing is, can you create a mechanism which would automate this operations of mundane repetitive tasks? The next one is, if you have a decentralized operation where AP is in one location, but the approvers and the buyers and everybody else are not only spread out in the office itself, but could also be in different locations or different plants. Presently, what would happen is that the invoice goes to the approver, and after they approve it, then it comes into the AP. Well, that whole time period, nobody is really aware that the invoice has even reached the company. So the ideal scenario would be, can you centralize the processing of the invoice, yet leave the approval of the invoice decentralized to the person, who actually ordered that item. Another thing which is actually somewhat unsaid but is very important is to standardize approval flows. Whenever we go in and have a new client come on board, one of the things we find out, and they find out also, is that there isn't standardization in the company about how do you approve invoices that fall into certain categories. And oddly enough, during the setup phase, a significant amount of time is spent while they themselves decide that is the way Jim does it better or is the way Mary does it better, and who one of them has to give up, because in an automated system, you can't have two ways to do it. But the end result of this is everybody comes down, to a standardized approval flow. And then on the flip side is that you should have metrics that allow you to see what kind of invoices that you are getting that are causing, people to have to do something with that invoice. In other words, it is not going through very easily. So, having that access to that kind of information will allow you to then determine how to actually improve whatever it was that was causing invoices from vendor A to always fail. And there are a variety of reasons, but ultimately it's the reports that give you that. And then on the other element that you can add is that now you don't have any more paper. Everything is electronic. Images are all electronic. And depending on your ERP system, images of these invoices can actually be associated with the data in that. So while you're looking at the invoice information, if you wanted access to the image, it is possible to do it from there. Of course, all of this information is also available in Nimbello. So sort of to summarize it, it would be that you're looking for operational efficiency. You want to centralize AP, but leave the approvals decentralized. You'd like to have standardized approval flow. You should have reports which will allow you to improve the processing of the invoices. And then lastly, there's no more paper and all the images are stored in a website that are easy to access.
Great. And Teresa, you mentioned you've been on this platform since 2018. So obviously an early adopter of this type of technology, but could you just mention a few items at LCI that, had you going down this road to begin with?
Yeah, we had a lot of, typical human errors, typos. We went from, just to give you an idea, from in 2019, from our duplication for our audit process, we went from, I have it written down. It was 4 million in duplication per quarter in errors, down to 600,000 in 2024. So that's a huge difference for the erroneous entries from AP. That's just from human error. Typing the invoice numbers incorrectly. This eliminates that because Nimbello does the heavy lifting for us. They do the header information. We don't have to worry about duplication of invoice numbers. Somebody typed a space where it shouldn't be, or typed an 8 instead of a 6, and then an invoice gets processed twice. That's not allowed. The system catches those errors. We also had a lot of people that, as Milind said, process things differently. Each plant tried to do their own thing. We're publicly traded, so we need a standard process. Our plants to standardize. So that's made a big difference for us as well.
Great, appreciate that. Milind, I'd like to talk a little bit about, quantifying that need for automation. Are there specific metrics or data points that a company should be looking at in terms of volume, or any other metrics you want to talk about that, again, would just make it like, hey, we should check this out?
Yes. Obviously, the size of the company is something that dictates everything. But if you were to look at it in reverse, that is, what is the minimum amount or the smallness of your company in order for automation to help? I mean, clearly automation would help even if you have, 25 invoices per month, but that might save you, half an hour and you may not think it's worth it. But among the metrics, And you all don't need to write this down. We've actually created a slide that we can share with you. But some of the things would be, look at your invoice volume. I would say if it exceeds 500 or 600 invoices a month, that is certainly something that would be, of great value. Thank you, Shereen. So they're also listed here. The next thing would be if you have your full-time AP staff, if you have at least one person doing it and that person is getting burdened and you don't want to add a person, that would be another thing. If your invoice data entry is all manual, that is definitely a indicator. Surprisingly, just because you are getting invoices by email versus paper mail, don't consider that AP automation. Yes, it's better that you don't have to scan it, but that is still not, eliminating all of the manual touches. If your average invoice size has more than one line, automation will help. PO invoices generally take more time to process because you have to do a three-way match. So as the percentage increases, that becomes a significant issue. Non-PO invoices, especially if you are larger companies, where you might have approval levels that are based on, let's say, a dollar amount, then that would be another reason why automation would help. If the data entry takes you more than 5 minutes per page and your invoices are more than one page, you should definitely consider. And then the last two are, how long does it take for an invoice when it hits your email box or your mailbox for it to actually enter your ERP system? And you want to reduce that, that would be one. And then how often do you all get calls from your vendors asking about, the non-payment or even what's going on with a particular invoice? If more than, 15, 20, 25% of your vendor calls are based on what is happening to that invoice, then automation would help. So, some or all of these metrics, if you all are above this, automation will definitely help.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Milind. Let's talk a little bit about the technical side of this too. What does this actually mean? So if you want to go down this route, or you're even just thinking, what does this mean? So can you explain a little bit, how does the AP automation work, and what components are needed to make this work?
Yeah, that's very good. So generally what you would have to do is that in order for an automation to work, let's define what automation really should be. Our definition of automation is that an invoice hits your email box, a PO invoice hits your email box, and the data should be captured off of that invoice. All of the information on that invoice should be compared to your purchase order and your receipts. And if everything agrees, that invoice should automatically go into your ERP system and ready to be paid whenever you want to pay it. So that to us is the goal you should be striving for. And we call that touchless. You might hear this term being bandied around, but true touchless is the invoice hits the email box and a short while later it shows up in your ERP system. Or what if it doesn't agree with all of your rules? Or what if it's a non-PO invoice that has to be touched? Well, in that case, if it's a PO invoice, then the data on that invoice should be automatically validated, and the system should determine what is wrong and which line has an error in it and who needs to fix it, so that when a person actually has to fix it, they don't have to do all of this. All the information that they need to make a decision is right in front of it. So the point being that if invoice needs to be touched, fixing it or approving it should be very rapid. And lastly, you should be able to figure out which vendors or which invoices are the ones that you have to keep touching. And you should have metrics that you can actually look at, and therefore we can go in and fix the invoices that have the largest number of issues first. So those would be metrics. So really, a fully automated system should be able to go through touchless, and if there are issues, it should be fixed rapidly, and then you should have metrics to allow you to speed things up. We call it the TRM method, and these are the three sort of elements that one of these things a system should have. So if we look at this screen out here, this sort of gives you the architecture of how an automation system would work with the TRM in place. So the main components are on the left-hand side. You should have the ability to collect the invoices that are hitting your AP mailbox. And then the invoice part of it should run through some software that can take that information and digitize it, meaning grab all of the data from it. Then you need to be able to automatically take that information and enhance it if it needs to be, in order for it to be matched up. So for example, if it's a duplicate invoice, as Teresa had mentioned, it should be kicked out. If this invoice needs to go through three-way matching, it needs to go down that route. If it's a non-PO invoice and the other thing is, all invoices come in with a vendor name, but they don't have a vendor number. So the system should automatically correlate one to the other. So those are all the things that need to happen to the data that was on the invoice. And then it should go into this routing engine that should determine whether it matches things or not. And if it does, then it should go directly into your ERP system. And if it doesn't, then it needs to go to somebody who needs to fix it. And after they fix it, it goes into your ERP system. So that integration. So to sort of summarize this, you need the front end, which does the mailbox handling and automation. Then you need an OCR engine to take the invoices that came in off of that email and read everything in it. Then you should, as part of that, enhance the data that was on that invoice. Then it goes into a workflow engine, which should have all of the rules that you need in order to process that invoice. You have all of those, or almost all of those rules already in your ERP system, but they are sort of mimicked here. And lastly, once the invoice has been approved, it needs to go into your ERP. And here are some of the ERP systems that we have integrated into. In order for this rules engine to work, the integration has to be, bi-directional. In other words, data about your POs and your GLs and your vendor master and receipts and all of that needs to be pulled out of the ERP system and put into our workflow system. So that information is coming in from one side, and the invoice and the images are coming in from the other side, and they are all married in, while we are in that workflow system, and then the results come in. So those are the components that really need to be in place in order for this system to actually work.
So Milind, we've got a couple questions coming in here.
Yeah, sure.
I think your next slide though might actually help to answer some of these. If you want to talk more about the specifics of the actual system and line item splitting and approvals and such.
Sure.
And if not, then I'll address those questions, or we can get those questions answered once you're through that.
So why don't we do this? Hopefully now everybody has an idea of the high-level architecture. The next couple of slides, I'll get into a little bit more of the details. So Sharif, if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide shows you how an OCR engine works. On the right-hand side is the image of the invoice, and on the left-hand side was the data that has been read. Typically, an OCR engine used to work using what they called zone reading. Zone reading means on this invoice on the top right-hand corner for this particular supplier is the invoice number. So the first time that you would read this invoice, you would put it in there, you draw a box around that, and you would draw a box around the adorn name. And so the system would make a template and remember that the invoice number is there. The problem is that if Adorn ever changed their invoice template, your template would not work. So the more modern systems they do what's called tag reading. So in tag reading, they're not looking at a specific spot, they're looking for the word. So you teach this thing to look for the word invoice or invoice number or INV number or INV pound. So there are 8 or 9 different phrases. You teach it and say, if you see this phrase anywhere on this invoice, look for an alphanumeric field either right next to it or right below it, and that is the invoice number. So in that case, it doesn't matter where this field is, the system automatically reads it. And it does the same thing for everything, as you go down. On the left-hand side, it uses a traffic signal nomenclature to tell you what did it pick up. So a green is it found that field and it picked it and it is confident that is correct. A dotted one is that it found it, but it is not sure of the answer. And a red one is it couldn't find that particular field. So in this case, it found pretty much everything, except it was not certain where to pick up the product description on the line items. And that is because you can see on each line, there were, after the part number, there were actually 2 lines. So the system stopped the first time through saying, I don't know which line to pick up. So the first time that this supplier's invoice would go through, one of the AP clerks would look at it, and you can either choose the top line, the bottom line, or both lines. So you just draw a box around it, and at that point, this invoice is ready to go. So it's very easy to teach the system, and the system itself uses machine learning. So after you've taught it, you don't have to tell it that the next time this invoice comes in from this supplier, make sure you combine these 2 lines together or only read the top line, because you've already drawn the box around how that OCR should work. So that's how the OCR. So Sharif, you can go to the next slide. So this is the second thing, that after the invoices have been read, I mentioned that you need to do what's called enhancement. And enhancement is the concept of what line on your purchase order is actually being billed. So let's assume you have a 3-line purchase order and the invoice only came in for 2 lines because they only shipped you 2 lines. On the invoice, typically they'll have the PO number, but they don't have the PO line number. So if you were entering this manually, you would look at maybe the part number, the unit price, the quantity, and based on that, you would figure out that the first line on the invoice is actually PO line number 3, and then you would do that entry. Well, that first part is called pairing. And if you're ever doing research into AP automation systems, that is something you need to investigate, because not many systems have that. Most of them make you physically log in and pick up the line. Well, if you're doing that, then the invoice is not going through touchless. In our solution, we've built in algorithms which actually do that. And so once the pairing is done, then we go in and do a 3-way match between the PO and the invoice, and also between the invoice and the receipt. And in that, you also have to handle things like, what if there is a mismatch because of a unit and measure problem, meaning the invoice was in boxes or dozens, and the invoice is in eaches. All of that is enhancement that you need to do in order for a touchless process to work through. So those are some of the components in there that you need to make sure that a accounting or an automation system happens in order for this invoice to actually go through. Very quickly, if you go to the last slide, I'll just give you one last element. So here is sort of what I was talking about in the metrics. So you should have the ability to have a summary page that AP can log in that shows you all the invoices in the system. And if they are on hold, it gives you the hold reason on one side. It tells you who that invoice was directed to. And it also tells you how many days has this been in the system and how many days has it been since the person who it was sent to has actually touched this invoice. So everything that AP needs is right here, and they can use this dashboard to monitor things. When a user logs in, if there's something wrong with an invoice, the middle screen that would be the screen that would pop up, and it would tell them that on this multiple line invoice, the problem is only on line 1, and there's a price variance because the amount invoiced was $6 and the PO price was $5.50. And so then they can decide, which of the two is correct. And in there is a commentary page or a commentary section where they can type in instructions to AP, and then that would go through. And then lastly, that is the box that shows you that the interaction between Nimbello and your ERP, how much of that has occurred. So these are the kinds of screens that you can use, to sort of improve your metrics. So Adam,
Milind,
did I cover
well, I
your
was just going to
question?
say, I want to make sure we covered these questions because one item you just talked there at the end is mapping to the ERP or getting into the ERP. What does the building that GL bridge look like? And does the system have the capability to split accounts or split postings based on what it reads on the invoice for multiple items on one invoice?
Yes, it does. So if you're talking about a non-PO invoice, typically the supplier might only send you one line, but you may want to split it into 3 different accounts. So our system has your entire GL code list there, and the user can go in and basically split it any way they want. You can also restrict it so that people, for example, in the IT group can only see the 6 GL accounts that they can use. But short answer is yes, you can split it any way you want.
And is there a limit to the number of part numbers or the system will hold?
No, because what we are doing is we are actually not holding the part numbers. We are getting the information from your POs. So whatever part number you're using on the PO, that's the part number we're going to compare the invoice to. And if the supplier puts their own part number and it doesn't agree with your part number, then obviously that pairing mechanism doesn't work. And then we'll look at other ones like quantity and unit price and so forth to figure out which line number.
Great. And I think you have kind of already addressed this, but just to confirm, this screen, now there's going to be manual eyes that have to review this and see this, and something's going to sit there for approval or corrections until it's addressed by, a manager or the workflow that whoever has access to this area, they have to address this before it can move forward. Is that correct?
That is correct. So that top section, that's the summary, and it gives you a listing of all invoices that are on hold, and an invoice cannot move forward until that hold is fixed. And what we do here is that if you see the days since last action, when the invoice first comes in, a user gets an email telling them they have an invoice they have to fix, and if they log in, they see the middle part, which shows them what they have to do. But if they do nothing, we have an escalation table built in where you can go in and say that if there was no action for 3 days, send a reminder email, or if there are only 4 days left before the due date, send another reminder email. And you can even put in that if they haven't done anything, escalate that invoice from this person's queue to somebody else's queue. So the system is actually doing all of that, this reminding people to get things done. And AP essentially is just looking at this dashboard and has the ability to say, if we're close to, when this invoice has to be paid and if somebody hasn't done something, they can route it to somebody else. And this takes away the comment that a user can say, I just got this invoice yesterday. Can you process it today because the supplier is threatening to cut us off? And you can say, no, it was sitting on your desk for the last 9 days. You did nothing.
All right. Well, thank you for that follow-up there, and just want to make sure we address these questions as they come in. I do want to make sure we get to Teresa here so she can talk about her experience. But before we do that, could you be able to give us just a quick overview of what, a timeline of implementation or integration to go live is? If somebody wanted to, start with a system like this, what's it look like from beginning to end in terms of timeline?
Typically, we get this thing done in about 90 days. And in the 90 days, the longest part is the front end where the client has to tell us what rules do they want to implement, because as I said, and as Teresa mentioned, your rules may not be consistent. So getting you guys to agree what your rules are, but 90 days is relatively a good size if you want to use as a rule of thumb.
Thank you. And before we get to Teresa, we are going to do our second polling question here. That's going to be going up here in a second, and it's simply, do you route and approve your invoices manually today? Hopefully.
You had somebody with a raised hand. Name is Jacqueline Salzman. If she would like to come off mute and ask a question.
Go ahead, Jacqueline. If you can hear this, you should be able to talk now. All right. Maybe not.
It's not working.
Yeah, if not, feel free to type it in the question and answer, and we'll try to get it addressed. Cherie, has that poll gone up yet? The second poll question? There we go.
All right, our poll is open. About 85% complete. We're going to give you about another 15 seconds to complete the poll. Okay, we're going to close the poll now. And here are those results.
All right. So yeah, we've got a lot of people still doing this manually. So again, probably good information just for you to hear today. So I do want to jump over to Teresa now. Teresa, you've given us a good amount of background already on your role in Lippert in general, but it'd probably be good to expand on some of the AP operations at Lippert and really what you're dealing with on a daily basis.
So, excuse me, the way AP is set up at Lippert is each division has their own AP person assigned to it, and they process for that plant and probably a few other plants, depending on how big it is, for processing. I think when we started with Nimbello, we had 26 AP processors, and we were processing for 64 divisions. That was in 2018. Right now we have 86 divisions and we have 17 processors. So the process has really, it's really helped with the time, not just with the errors, but actually with the time that it takes to actually process. So yeah, it's been a life changer for all of AP. But yeah.
So yeah, obviously with some huge growth there. What is the actual, do you have an estimate of how many invoices a month you go through in all those divisions?
Probably all combined, probably 30 to 40,000 a month.
Wow. And are most of those PO based or how is your system? Okay.
Most of it's PO based, but I will tell you on the AP side in Nimbello, the non-PO based is super easy. You set up the approval group, you can set things up to auto route and code. It's all, AP doesn't even have to see the invoice. It goes straight through to the approver. It's already coded. Once the approver sees it, it goes right to ready to export. It's pretty awesome. And we actually have it set up so that it can they can approve via email, because we have a lot of GMs that are too busy to log into the system. So goes to their email. They get a copy of the invoice. They get the GL coding. Click here to approve or log into Nimbello to not approve it. Once they approve it, that the communication goes back to Nimbello with their secured email, and it goes to ready to export. So it's all logged. We have to have approvals logged for SOX rules for us. So it's all secured. Everything's taken care of for audit as well. So makes life a lot easier for utilities, leases, anything that you need right away. You know, it's pretty simple. And those are a lot of invoices that AP doesn't even have to touch. So makes life a lot easier for them.
And again, you've touched on this a little bit, but really, what were the reasons for the, going to AP automation, even back in exploring this, let's say 2017,
Yeah.
2018?
So, I mean, we had 26 AP people and we couldn't keep up with the process. We were doing everything manually. We did have an OCR software that was, it was okay, but it wasn't great. We had what we used with an e-form in our software. It was very clunky. It didn't flow. We had to have 4 people on our team internally move things within the system. So the capturing part of it, the verification part of it that Milind was talking about with the headers and the boxes, we had 4 people on our team that had to move those things and capture those things. We don't do that anymore. I have 1 person on my team that helps manage Nimbello, and she actually does the setup for new people in Nimbello. She does training for me for Nimbello. If I can't do the training, she also does setup for the approval groups for non-POs. So our touch is limited. We don't have to worry about that anymore. But basically it was headcount and the number of errors that we had. I mean, when you look at $4 million a quarter in errors compared to 600,000, that's a big difference. So
and that's huge to be able to say that now.
it is, yeah, it is.
But to get to that point, and what kind of obstacles did you have to overcome, whether it's internal, external, dealing with suppliers?
It was mostly internal. Yeah, because going plant to plant, we know that they don't do everything exactly the same. We have a lot of different product lines, and you have different plants that want to do things their way. So getting those divisions together and saying, hey, this is the way we're doing it. This is the best practice. And this is the way the system processes. It made it a lot easier to have everything processed the same way in front of them. The biggest issue we had was convincing the purchasing agents that this is their PO. They need to fix the purchasing order to match the invoice, or what's wrong with this? This is your exception. Why doesn't it match? They didn't think they should have to do that. They thought it was accounting's responsibility to fix their invoices. So, because, historically that's what AP has done. And people just hate change. There was a lot of pushback. They didn't want to deal with it. Bought a lot of donuts and some candy and made a lot of friends. Alice and I went to a lot of plants and did a lot of training. I think we made it easier because the first plant that I chose was actually in the same building as corporate. So I just had to go downstairs and, talk to them, and it was a lot easier. We had a lot of follow-up meetings. Follow-up is key to keep everybody on track, to make sure everybody's comfortable with the changes. So we did it slow. We did 1 plant a month.
Okay.
And then as word got out, and we have a lot of purchasing agents that have consolidated their product lines by divisions. So if you have chassis, you have the same group of purchasing agents that order chassis products. And that covers, I think, 7 plants. So you have the same PAs that are processing for all 7 plants. So it made it easier to roll those plants out as well. So, but again, everybody wants to do things their own way. And no matter how many times you train that one person, they're still going to just not want to give in and do what you're supposed to do. So, but again,
Milind,
you have full visibility too, which makes it a lot easier. So,
yeah. So Milind, I do want to come back to you just for this question, because you've been through this numerous times as well. When you see a project get off track, what are the biggest factors if you're going through an implementation, and how do you help them keep on track and get this to the finish line?
So a little bit of what Teresa was saying happens all the time, which is that at the client, when we are training them to use the system, there are a few people who are resistant and they don't show up at training sessions, and then they complain that the system isn't working. So to try to get them to actually come in and see how to do the thing is the first big problem. The second one is, in general, everybody is busy. And so when they're trying to get into a new solution, unless there is complete buy-in from whoever is running that AP department, things are just going to drag on. But on the other hand, there are people who they may have had an issue where their staff is short-staffed, or somebody has left, or they had some kind of a catastrophe because an invoice was incorrectly processed. So they just want to get this thing in place and have it running quickly. And then when they start seeing that things are so much easier because now the AP staff is not spending time doing, mundane things, they're doing things which are of greater value. That's when they believe it.
Great. So Teresa, you touched on, reduction of the duplicates and money going out. What other benefits have you guys experienced since you've implemented Nimbello?
Honestly, I think it's easier. AP is a lot easier to process, and call me an AP geek, but I think it's fun to process in Nimbello. It's a lot prettier than the software that we had. It flows easier. I've had IT argue with me on our end saying that it's the same. I'm like, it's not the same. It doesn't flow. You have to go back and forth and shift the screens on what we had. This is all on one screen. You just go down the page. When I first started training AP in it, I picked people that I knew may struggle with it, but those people all came on board really quickly. They liked it. They also helped improve the process. From the beginning, I had 46 people on my team, not including AP. I mean, including AP, but it wasn't just AP. I had other departments as well. So all I really got to focus on was HR stuff. I didn't get to focus on process improvement or, making things better for the AP team. So once we decided to outsource and look at Nimbello, I mean, I think I demoed probably 15 different softwares, and Nimbello was by far the best. Plus they were local, which made it even better.
So can you expand on that a little bit though? Is there something specific? If you demoed 15 different companies, what were the deciding factors there?
The flow, actually. I didn't want to change the entire process for AP. I wanted to stay as similar as we could to their process for the three-way match. And Nimbello comes as close as possible to what an actual person would look at, or an AP clerk would look at when they're doing a three-way match. You start at the header, you go to the next section, you go to the next section. If it matches, it matches. If it doesn't, it goes right to the next person that it's supposed to go to. We have variances put in by division, by vendor. AP doesn't even have to know what those variances are. The system does. You make the invoice match, or you pull the PO in, you make it match the system, make it match the invoice. And if there is a variance or an exception, it goes right to the next person it's supposed to go to. So if you're training a level 1 AP, you don't have to explain those variances to them. Just make the invoice match, and it takes care of the rest of it. So, but yeah, compared to the other softwares that I demoed, the flow was just better. Everything was on one screen. It was, I hate to say that it's prettier, but it was much prettier, and it was easier to use.
And what about dealing with vendors and suppliers? Are they aware that you're using this type of system, or what if they have questions on where an invoice status is?
Yeah, actually, so we have a vendor portal with Nimbello. That was one of the things they helped create with that was our vendors can actually log into Nimbello, and they can only see their information. They can search by invoice. They can search by payment date if they have their payment reference number, whether it's ACH or a check number. They can find their remittance information. They can do their own remittances. They can reconcile their own statements. AP shouldn't have to do that. They can go in and they can click on an invoice and see what the status is. Is it posted? Is it paid? Is it stuck in somebody's queue? They can comment directly to AP and ask the question, why did you short pay this? Or when is this going to pay? Why haven't you paid this yet? Kind of thing. And AP can communicate right back with the vendor and give a direct answer. We can also track the communication between the vendor and AP. Lots of times you'll have the vendor say, well, I've emailed this person 3 times. They don't even have to know who the person is. Because again, at Lippert, we have divisions. And the divisions, depending on who's processing AP, which those hats change a lot, you may have AP clerk number 1 doing plant 48, and then 2 weeks later, she's going to be doing plant 50. And somebody else is doing plant 48. So the vendors don't even have to know who their AP person is. They just click AP admin, and it sends an email to the person that's directed to that plant. And it goes to that AP person, and they respond back to the vendor within Nimbello. So there's no looking at emails outside of the system as well. And that's a huge perk as well inside the system. Everything stays in Nimbello. You do get notifications outside of Nimbello, but your process stays in Nimbello. So you're not tracking down emails. You're not tracking down, oh, I got this email, 3-4 days ago. I gotta go find it, see what the last response was. It's all in Nimbello. You don't have to look at that. You can put your notes in there. You can see when the last touch was. You can see who moved it to whose queue. You can see who approved it. Everything is readable. Everything's there. Everything's trackable, and everything is visible.
We've got a good question here that came in.
Sure.
What are the reporting capabilities in terms of Nimbello, in terms of recording accruals for month end, or how do you guys do that for month end close and financial reporting?
Yes. So our accrual report, they actually took our accrual report that we run on our end from our software, and they created a new accrual report to match cell by cell what we have on our accrual report, so that when our staffers get the reports, they don't have to copy, they don't have to move cells, they can just copy and paste. And in our reports, you pull in what's open in Nimbello. So it accounts for all invoices that are in process that have not been posted. So, and then you can compare that to your open accruals for your purchase orders. But it does document all non-PO invoices as well. It actually puts the coding in there for you. So it's actually pretty sweet. Our AP department has till noon to process all of their accrual reports, send them to the staff accountants. Most of them are done by like 9 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, it's a huge improvement on that as well.
So, Milind, specifically, is more customized reporting available, or are you guys able to build that for companies if they have something that they specifically need?
Yes, we can do that because we have all of the data. But in general now, because of us building this for so many clients, pretty much every report that anybody wants is all there. And all reports are exportable to Excel. So, if the report is 90% in one and 10% in the other, you can run the two reports and combine them too.
We've also just had a question come in, and I'm not sure if this was on your slide or not. Does Nimbello integrate with NetSuite?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Also, at the bottom of each page, if you're searching invoices, you can dump that into Excel as well. Just FYI.
So Teresa, if somebody was, sat through this webinar now and again was just considering it, what kind of considerations would you, or advice would you give for the future?
I would look at your ERP system, make sure your data services is on board. That's the biggest issue we had, was data services and integration. Cost is a big one, of course, for everybody. Timing. We had 64 plants that we put in there. So we did 1 a month, and then we started doing 2 a month. So timing is a big issue, and training is a big issue. Have good people on your side. But again, looking, if you're demoing other softwares, compare it to what you have, because you don't want to start over. You just want to build onto what you have. Keep your AP people happy because they pay your bills.
So Sheree, if you could put up poll question number 3 now. Does your ERP currently have an OCR data capture? Yes or no? And while that's going, and before we wrap up here today, we do still have 5 minutes left before this officially ends. If there's any more questions, whether somebody wants to type in the chat, the question and answer, raise your hand, feel free to put that in now, and we'll get those answered.
I'm going to give this another 5 seconds or so. Make sure everybody has an opportunity to get their CPE today.
So while we're doing that, I did see a question pop up. Is how do you determine the ROI once it's implemented? How have you proven out that this, the return was worth it on the investment?
I can answer it based on what clients do when we talk to them. Clearly, what they're trying to do is, can this improve the efficiency of their process? Because they all have staff on board. And one of two things can happen. If you have a large number of people like Lippert did, and you didn't really want to add any more, then our solution would allow you to terminate a group of people that would not be necessary. So in the ROI calculation, a big part there is the amount of headcount reduction versus the cost to us. A rule of thumb that we have found is that when you're doing this thing manually, one AP person can process between about 700 to maybe 1100 invoices a month. With full automation like ours, you should be able to do between 2,500 and 3,000 invoices a month with one person. So basically, you're tripling your throughput. So that's the key metric that you're looking at, because if you only have, say, one AP person, you're obviously not going to terminate that person. Then your ROI calculation becomes, can you take away half the work that that person is doing and have the system do it, and they can do something more valuable. So this is just on the AP side. The softer costs that people cannot really quantify are savings on things like accrual reports and other buyers or vendors calling up and things like that.
Thank you. Thank you for following up on that. Well, it looks like we've come to about the end of our time today. I just want to
Adam, we
thank
do
everybody
have
for
one more
attending.
poll to
Well,
push out, so maybe
yeah,
we
I'm
can
good.
push that out and then share our last slide.
Yep.
Okay.
So go ahead and push that poll out. And
Hold
again,
on a
if you're
second.
interested in learning more
There
about
we go.
specifically about Nimbello, feel free to let us know that. Be glad to have some information follow up. And appreciate you all attending here today.
Okay, we're going to keep this poll open for another about 10 seconds. Please go ahead and get those responses in. It looks like we achieved 100%. So we're going to end this poll. And thank you all for joining our call today. Please take the time to tell us how we did and complete the evaluation. And we look forward to seeing you all in the future. Adam, any closing words before we close out?
No, I just want to thank you again. And I did see one specific question come in here towards the end that I'm going to follow up directly with that guest. Again, just appreciate your guys' attendance today. And again, if there's any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.